In March 1997, the world watched in disbelief as news emerged from a quiet suburb in Rancho Santa Fe, California. This serene and affluent community, known for its picturesque landscapes and luxurious homes, was suddenly thrust into the global spotlight. The shocking revelation came from a mansion where 39 bodies were discovered. These individuals were meticulously dressed in identical black shirts and sweatpants, with each body carefully arranged in a serene and almost ritualistic manner. They were members of Heaven's Gate, a cult that believed a spaceship trailing the Hale-Bopp comet would transport their souls to a higher level of existence. This belief was so strong that they willingly participated in a mass suicide, convinced that their deaths would lead them to a promised utopia. The Hale-Bopp comet, a celestial event that captivated the world, became a symbol of hope and salvation for the members of Heaven's Gate. They saw it as a sign, a cosmic vehicle that would take them away from the suffering and confusion of earthly life. This tragic event offered a chilling glimpse into the powerful grip of belief and the devastating consequences of its extremes. It was a stark reminder of how deeply held convictions can lead to actions that defy logic and reason. The Heaven's Gate tragedy wasn't just a sensational headline, it was a deeply human story of individuals yearning for meaning and connection. These were people who, for various reasons, felt lost in the world and sought solace in the unconventional teachings of their charismatic leaders. The leaders of Heaven's Gate, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, offered a vision of transcendence and escape from the perceived evils of the world. Their teachings promised a new beginning, a chance to leave behind the pain and uncertainty of human existence. Their journey, though ultimately ending in tragedy, forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about faith, authority, and the human need to believe. It challenges us to understand the complexities of the human psyche and the lengths to which people will go to find purpose and belonging in an often confusing and chaotic world. The story of Heaven's Gate begins with its enigmatic leaders, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles. Their journey is one of the most intriguing and tragic tales in the annals of modern cult history. Applewhite, a charismatic former music professor, had a magnetic personality that drew people to him. His deep, expressive eyes and commanding voice made him a natural leader. Nettles, a nurse with a keen interest in esoteric spirituality, met Applewhite in the early 1970s. She was fascinated by astrology and the metaphysical, which complemented Applewhite's own burgeoning spiritual quest. They quickly formed a powerful bond, believing they were destined to guide humanity towards a higher plane of existence. Their connection was almost instantaneous, and they felt a shared sense of purpose that transcended ordinary human relationships. Applewhite, who later adopted the moniker Dew, saw himself as a modern-day prophet. He believed he had a divine mission to fulfill, one that was revealed to him through a series of mystical experiences. And Nettles, known as T, was the spiritual anchor of their partnership. Together they began traveling across the United States, preaching a message of spiritual enlightenment and warning of an impending apocalypse. Their travels took them to various cities and towns, where they held meetings and gathered followers. They claimed to be extraterrestrial beings who had taken human form to share their wisdom and prepare a select few for a cosmic journey. This extraordinary claim set them apart from other spiritual leaders of the time and added an element of mystery and intrigue to their teachings. Their teachings, a blend of Christian apocalyptic themes and New Age beliefs, resonated with individuals disillusioned with mainstream religion and searching for deeper meaning in a rapidly changing world. They offered a sense of community and purpose to those who felt lost or disconnected, promising a transformative journey that would lead to a higher state of being. This unique combination of beliefs attracted a diverse group of followers, each seeking their own path to enlightenment. At the core of Heaven's Gate's belief system was the idea that the human body was merely a temporary vessel, a vehicle for the soul to inhabit until it could ascend to a higher level of existence. This concept, deeply rooted in Gnostic and Theosophical traditions, led them to adopt a highly disciplined and ascetic lifestyle. Members renounced all earthly possessions, adopted gender-neutral appearances, and adhered to strict dietary and behavioral regulations. They believed that by purging themselves of all earthly desires and attachments, they could prepare their souls for the graduation that awaited them, a transformation into immortal beings who would transcend the limitations of human existence and join the next level, or the evolutionary level above human. In 1995, the astronomical world was captivated by the appearance of Comet Hale-Bopp, a celestial visitor that blazed across the night sky, becoming visible even to the naked eye. For the members of Heaven's Gate, the comet was more than just a cosmic spectacle. It was a sign, a harbinger of their imminent departure from Earth. Applewhite taught his followers that a spaceship was trailing the comet, hidden from the view of ordinary humans. This spaceship, he claimed, would transport the souls of those who were ready to the next level. The arrival of Hale-Bopp sent a wave of anticipation and excitement through the group, and they intensified their preparations for the exit they believed was imminent. In late March 1997, as Hale-Bopp reached its closest point to Earth, the world watched in awe. This celestial event, visible to the naked eye, captivated millions around the globe. But for one group, it signified something far more profound and ominous. The members of Heaven's Gate gathered inside their rented mansion in Rancho Santa Fe. This mansion, an otherwise unremarkable suburban home, became the stage for a tragic and meticulously planned event. They meticulously carried out Applewhite's instructions for their final departure. Each member, deeply devoted to their leader, believed they were on the brink of a monumental journey. Over 3 days, in groups, they ingested a lethal mixture of phenobarbital-laced applesauce and vodka, a concoction prepared with precision. This act was not one of despair, but of conviction, as they believed it was their gateway to a higher existence. Believing this ritual would release their souls from their earthly vessels, freeing them from the confines of their human forms. This belief was the cornerstone of their faith, a faith that promised transcendence, allowing them to board the waiting spaceship. This spaceship, they believed, was hidden in the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet, ready to take them to a new realm of existence. Each member was found lying neatly in their bunk beds, a scene of eerie calm and order. Their commitment to the cause was evident in the meticulousness of their final moments. Dressed in identical black tracksuits and Nike trainers, a uniform that symbolized their unity and shared purpose. Their faces covered with purple shrouds. These shrouds, a final touch, were meant to signify their departure from this world. Beside each body lay a $5 bill and 3 quarters, a symbolic gesture meant to cover their interplanetary travel expenses, a poignant and tragic detail, a poignant reminder of their earthly existence they were leaving behind. These small tokens were the last remnants of their lives on Earth, now abandoned for a promised new beginning. The scene, carefully orchestrated and documented by the group themselves, was a testament to their unwavering belief. They left behind videos and writings explaining their actions and their faith, was a chilling testament to the power of belief and the tragic consequences of its distortion. This event remains one of the most haunting examples of how deeply held convictions can lead to devastating outcomes. The discovery of the Heaven's Gate suicides sent shockwaves throughout the world. The media descended upon Rancho Santa Fe, eager to unravel the mystery of the group and understand the motivations behind their chillingly calculated deaths. The tragedy sparked intense debate about the nature of cults, the dangers of charismatic leadership, and the vulnerabilities of individuals searching for meaning and belonging. In the aftermath, families grappled with the devastating loss of their loved ones, struggling to reconcile the memory of their family member with the chilling reality of their final act. The tragedy also prompted soul-searching within law enforcement and mental health communities, raising questions about how such a large group could slip through the cracks and whether anything could have been done to prevent the tragedy. The Heaven's Gate tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the complexities of human belief and the enduring power of the human need to find meaning and purpose, even in the face of adversity. While it's easy to dismiss the group's beliefs as irrational and extreme, their story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of faith, the allure of charismatic leaders, and the vulnerabilities that make individuals susceptible to cult influence. The tragedy also highlights the importance of critical thinking, healthy skepticism, and open dialogue within families and communities. By fostering environments where individuals feel safe to question, explore, and seek help when needed, we can perhaps prevent future tragedies and offer support to those who may be vulnerable to the allure of extremist ideologies. The morning sun glinted off the skyscrapers of Houston, a city pulsing with life. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, a storm was brewing. At the heart of it all was Abel Bonds, a name synonymous with second chances in the city's bustling courts. But on this day, the only thing A-able bonds would be offering was a front-row seat to a stunning downfall. The silence of the morning was shattered by the screech of tires and the bark of orders. Heavily armed FBI agents, faces grim, stormed the offices of A-able bonds. It was a scene straight out of a Hollywood thriller, except this was all too real. The target was not a drug cartel or a mafia ring, but an unassuming office building, home to an alleged criminal conspiracy that had shaken Houston to its core. News of the raid spread like wildfire, sending shockwaves through the city. The scale of the operation, the sheer audacity of the alleged crimes left everyone reeling. How could a company entrusted with upholding the law, with providing a lifeline to those accused but not yet convicted, be at the center of such a massive fraud? The A-able bonds raid was not just about one company's alleged misdeeds. It was a lightning strike that illuminated the dark underbelly of the bail bond system, exposing its vulnerabilities and raising uncomfortable questions about fairness, accountability, and the price of freedom in America. The world of bail bonds is shrouded in mystery, a labyrinthine system only truly understood by those who navigate its murky waters. For the average citizen, it represents a lifeline, a way to secure the release of loved ones from jail while awaiting trial. But for some, it's a means to exploit the vulnerable and profit from desperation.
The premise is simple. When someone is arrested, a judge sets bail, a sum of money guaranteeing their appearance in court. Most people can't afford the exorbitant amounts, enter bail bond companies. For a non-refundable fee, usually 10% of the bail, they post bond on the defendant's behalf, assuming the risk they'll show up in court.
This system, however, is fraught with pitfalls. Critics argue it disproportionately punishes the poor, trapping them in a cycle of debt and incarceration even if they're later found innocent. Moreover, it creates an environment ripe for exploitation, where unscrupulous operators can prey on desperation, cutting corners and flouting regulations for profit.
The A-able bonds case brought these systemic flaws into sharp focus. It served as a stark reminder that when profit trumps justice, the very foundation of the legal system is at risk. The scandal demanded a closer look at the bail bond industry, its practices, and its impact on those it claims to serve.
The alleged scheme at the heart of the A-able bonds scandal was audacious in its simplicity and breathtaking in its scope. Prosecutors painted a picture of a company willing to exploit the system for its gain, putting profit before the law and jeopardizing public safety.
At its core, the scheme involved allegedly falsifying documents to secure bonds for high-risk defendants who couldn't afford bail on their own. These weren't parking tickets or misdemeanors. These were individuals accused of serious crimes, deemed a potential danger to the community. Yet, A-able bonds allegedly enabled their release, potentially putting the public at risk.
The company allegedly fabricated pay stubs, manufactured employment histories, and even forged cosigner signatures. They created a facade of financial stability, convincing judges that these high-risk defendants were good candidates for release. In reality, they were allegedly ticking time bombs, free to roam the streets due to a web of lies.
The scheme was elaborate, involving a network of employees from clerks to agents, all allegedly complicit in the fraud. The indictment detailed how they allegedly coached clients on fabricating information, destroyed evidence, and even used coded language to cover their tracks.
At the center of this alleged conspiracy stood Sheba Muharib, the CEO of A-able bonds. Once a respected figure in Houston's legal circles, Muharib became the face of the scandal, her name synonymous with greed and corruption.
Prosecutors allege that Muharib was the architect of the entire operation, the driving force behind the company's descent into criminality. They painted a picture of a ruthless businesswoman motivated by profit above all else. She allegedly fostered a culture of deceit within A-able bonds, where employees were either complicit or too afraid to speak out.
But Muharib wasn't alone. The indictment named several other key players, including Mary Brown, the company's chief operating officer, and Oscar Wattell, a high-ranking manager. These individuals held positions of power and trust within A-able bonds, and prosecutors allege they abused that trust for their personal gain.
The indictment sent shockwaves through the community. These weren't shadowy figures operating in the shadows, but individuals known in the legal community, people who interacted with law enforcement and court officials daily. Their alleged involvement cast a long shadow over the entire bail bond industry, raising serious questions about its integrity and accountability.
Section 5, Broken Trust, Shattered Lives, the Human Cost of the Scandal. The A. Abel Bonds scandal wasn't just about numbers on a balance sheet or legal technicalities, it was about real people whose lives were irrevocably impacted by the alleged fraud. Behind the headlines and courtroom drama lay a trail of broken trust and shattered lives.
Families of crime victims were particularly outraged. They felt betrayed by a system that was supposed to protect them. Instead, it allegedly allowed dangerous individuals to walk free, putting the community at risk. The thought that their loved ones' alleged assailants could have been kept behind bars if the system had worked as intended was a bitter pill to swallow.
But the impact extended beyond the courtroom. The scandal eroded public trust in the justice system, leaving many questioning its fairness and integrity. It highlighted the deep flaws in a system that often seemed to favor the wealthy and connected, leaving the vulnerable at the mercy of unscrupulous operators.
The human cost of the A. Abel Bonds scandal served as a stark reminder that justice is more than just legal proceedings. It's about ensuring fairness, accountability, and a system that works for everyone, not just a select few.
Section 6. The long arm of the law, justice seeks a reckoning. The wheels of justice, though often slow, grind relentlessly, and in the case of A. Abel Bonds, the legal fallout was swift and severe. The charges leveled against the company and its employees were substantial, carrying the weight of decades in prison. The indictment was a catalog of alleged crimes: wire fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and more. Each charge represented a deliberate act of deceit, a calculated decision to subvert the law for personal gain. The prosecution's case was built on a mountain of evidence, meticulously gathered over months of investigation.
The defendants maintained their innocence, vowing to fight the charges. Their legal teams prepared for a protracted legal battle, one that promised to be both complex and contentious. The stakes were incredibly high, with reputations, livelihoods, and freedom hanging in the balance.
The A. Abel Bonds case became a lightning rod for national attention, shining a spotlight on the often overlooked world of bail bonds. As the legal proceedings unfolded, the nation watched, eager to see if justice would be served. The fallout from the A. Abel Bonds scandal sparked a nationwide debate. Calls for reform in the bail bond system echoed loudly, resonating with communities and lawmakers alike. Many questioned the ethics and fairness of a system that seemed to prey on the most vulnerable.
This case has shown us, more than ever, the urgent need for comprehensive reform. The bail bond system, as it stands, perpetuates inequality and injustice. We must work together to create a more equitable and just system for all.
The voices calling for change grew stronger, fueled by a collective desire to see a more just and fair legal system. As the nation grappled with the implications of the A. Abel Bonds case, discussions about equity and justice took center stage. Advocates and policymakers began to chart a path toward a more equitable system.
We need to address the root causes of the issues within the bail bond system. This means looking at systemic inequalities and working to dismantle them. It's not just about reforming bail bonds, it's about creating a legal system that truly serves everyone.
The road ahead was clear but challenging. It would require dedication, cooperation, and a commitment to justice. In the wake of the A. Abel Bonds case, the call to ensure justice is served fairly and justly resonated across the nation. The case had highlighted significant flaws in the system, and the need for change was undeniable.
It's essential that we hold those who exploit the system accountable, while also working to create a fairer process for all. Justice must be more than a concept. It must be a reality for everyone, regardless of their circumstances.
The journey toward a just legal system is ongoing, but the lessons learned from the A. Abel Bonds case have set the stage for meaningful change. The nation remains watchful, hopeful that justice will prevail. December 6, 1991, Austin, Texas. A night etched in darkness, forever remembered for a crime so horrific that it shook the city to its core. The yogurt shop murders. 4 innocent lives extinguished in a senseless act of brutality. A crime that, even after decades, continues to haunt the city and its people. This is not just a story about a crime, it is a story about loss, about the resilience of a community, and the unrelenting pursuit of justice. It's a story about the victims and their families, forever scarred by the tragedy, and it's a story that, even today, remains shrouded in mystery. Amy Ayers, 13, was the youngest of the victims. She was a bright and bubbly girl with a contagious laugh. Eliza Thomas, 17, was known for her kindness and her love for animals. Jennifer Harbison, 15, was a talented artist with a bright future ahead of her. Sarah Harbison, 17, Jennifer's sister, was a natural leader, popular and full of life. These were ordinary girls with extraordinary spirits, their lives brimming with hopes and dreams. They were daughters, sisters, friends, their absence leaving a gaping hole in the lives of those who loved them. On that fateful night, they were simply enjoying an evening out, their laughter and chatter echoing in the small yogurt shop, oblivious to the horror that awaited them. The first sign of something amiss was the fire. Flames engulfed the I Can't Believe It's yogurt shop, casting an eerie glow against the night sky. Firefighters battled the blaze, their hearts pounding with each flicker of light, each plume of smoke. As the fire subsided, the true horror of the scene was revealed. Inside, amidst the charred debris and melted yogurt cups, lay the bodies of the 4 girls. They had been bound, gagged, and shot execution style. The brutality of the crime sent shockwaves through the community. The image of the burned shop, a grim monument to the tragedy, became seared into the city's collective memory. The investigation began immediately, a race against time to find the perpetrators of this heinous crime. The police worked tirelessly, following every lead, interviewing witnesses and meticulously combing the crime scene. The pressure was immense, the eyes of the nation on Austin, the cries for justice echoing from every corner. Despite their best efforts, the initial investigation yielded few clues. The crime scene, ravaged by the fire, offered little in the way of forensic evidence. Witnesses were scarce, and those who came forward could provide only fragmented accounts. The case, as quickly as it had burst into the headlines, began to grow cold. Section 5. False hope and shattered trust, the wrongful arrests. Years passed, the pain of the families deepening with each passing day. Then, in 1999, a glimmer of hope. 2 men, Forrest Wellborn and Maurice Pierce, were arrested for the murders. Their confessions, coerced and riddled with inconsistencies, offered a false promise of closure. The arrests brought a wave of relief, followed by a crushing blow. The charges against Wellborn and Pierce were eventually dropped due to lack of evidence. The dream of justice, reignited so briefly, was once again extinguished, leaving the families and the community grappling with the agonizing reality of a case unsolved. Section 6. DNA, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. In the early 2000s, advancements in DNA technology offered a new avenue for investigators. Evidence from the crime scene, preserved for over a decade, was re-examined. The results were startling. DNA profiles extracted from the evidence pointed to 2 individuals, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott. This breakthrough sent ripples of shock and anticipation through the community. Could this be the long-awaited answer? Could justice, so long elusive, finally be within reach? The DNA evidence, a beacon of hope in the darkness, breathed new life into the investigation, reawakening the pain, the anger, and the longing for closure. Section 7. Robert Springsteen, a twist of fate, a shadow of doubt. Robert Springsteen, a troubled young man with a history of mental health issues, became the focus of the investigation. Under intense interrogation, he confessed to the crime. However, his confession, like those before him, was later recanted, riddled with inconsistencies and claims of coercion. Despite his recantation, Springsteen was tried and convicted in 2001, based largely on his confession. The verdict, met with mixed emotions, highlighted the complexities of the case. Springsteen, sentenced to death, maintained his innocence, his fate hanging in the balance, a stark reminder of the high stakes and the lingering doubts that continued to cloud the case. Section 8. The Ghost of Michael Scott, Lingering Questions and Unanswered Prayers. While Springsteen's conviction offered a semblance of resolution, the shadow of Michael Scott loomed large. Scott, linked to the crime scene by DNA, remained a person of interest. However, he has never been charged in connection with the yogurt shop murders, his alleged role in the crime a haunting question mark. Scott's potential involvement, shrouded in speculation and rumor, has become a source of endless debate. Some believe he holds the key to unraveling the truth, while others maintain that his connection to the crime remains tenuous. The mystery surrounding Scott continues to fuel speculation, making it difficult to separate fact from fiction, truth from conjecture. Section 9, A Community Scarred, A Search for Closure. The yogurt shop murders remain one of Texas's most haunting unsolved cases. The crime cast a long shadow over Austin, a chilling reminder of the vulnerability of innocence in the face of evil. The families of the victims, forever bound by their shared grief, continue to seek answers, their pain a testament to the enduring power of love and loss. The search for justice continues. Advances in forensic science offer a glimmer of hope, the possibility that someday the truth, buried beneath layers of time and speculation, will finally be revealed. Until then, the memory of Amy, Eliza, Jennifer, and Sarah lives on, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring strength of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable tragedy. What drives a person to kill? Not once, not twice, but again and again? A question that has haunted humanity for centuries. Are they born with an innate predisposition for violence? Or are they products of their environment, molded by a cruel world? Tonight, we embark on a journey into the abyss, peering into the chilling world of serial killers. These predators, who stalk our nightmares and lurk in the shadows, remain one of the most perplexing enigmas of our time. We will dissect their methods, attempting to unravel the intricate tapestry of their psyche and uncover the terrifying truth behind their heinous crimes. Join us if you dare, as we delve into the darkest recesses of the human mind, seeking to comprehend the incomprehensible. Stay with us till the end as we reveal the dark psychology behind serial killers, and the shocking truth about what makes them tick. To embark on this journey into the heart of darkness, we must first define the predator. The FBI classifies a serial killer as an individual who commits at least 3 murders, separated by periods of apparent normalcy. Serial killers are often characterized by their chilling meticulousness. They plan meticulously, their actions dictated by a calculated logic. Some stalk their victims for weeks, studying their habits. Their actions are calculated maneuvers in a macabre game. These individuals often adhere to a distinct pattern, a macabre signature. The method of killing, the type of victim, the location, all contribute to a pattern. Each kill serves a perverse need, a dark desire. For some, it is the intoxicating allure of power and control. For others, it is a grotesque form of pleasure, a dark manifestation of their sexuality. The specter of the serial killer has haunted the human psyche for centuries, woven into our collective nightmares. These predators are not a product of modern society but a darkness that has stalked humanity since time immemorial. From Jack the Ripper's legacy to the Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages, these figures captivate us. Their stories, passed down through rumors and headlines, remind us of the darkness lurking beneath ordinary facades. The question of what transforms a seemingly ordinary human being into a cold-blooded killer has perplexed criminologists, psychologists, and sociologists for decades. Is it a matter of nature, a predetermined path etched into the very fabric of their DNA? Or are they molded by the cruel hand of nurture, their souls twisted and warped by the trauma they experienced in their formative years? Some researchers point to genetic predispositions, arguing that certain individuals are born with a greater propensity for violence and aggression. Studies have shown that abnormalities in brain structure and function, particularly in areas associated with impulse control and empathy, may play a role in the development of violent behavior. Others argue that while genetics may lay the foundation, it is the environment that ultimately determines whether or not an individual will tread the path of a killer. Childhood trauma, particularly severe and prolonged abuse, neglect, and exposure to violence, can leave indelible scars on a young mind. Chapter 4. Inside the Labyrinth, the Mind of the Killer. To comprehend the enigma of the serial killer, we must venture into their minds. One typology divides serial killers into organized and disorganized. The organized killer plans meticulously and blends into society. Ted Bundy exemplifies this type. The disorganized killer acts on impulse and leaves evidence. Richard Chase is a chilling example. Chapter 5. The Why of the Why. What motivates a serial killer? The question that has haunted investigators, psychologists, and the public alike is deceptively simple, yet maddeningly elusive. Why? What drives a human being to commit such horrific acts of violence, not once but repeatedly, often with chilling premeditation? The motivations behind serial killing are as varied and complex as the individuals who commit them. For some, the driving force is a lust for power and control. They derive a perverse sense of satisfaction from dominating their victims, from holding the power of life and death in their hands. The BTK killer, who terrorized Wichita for decades, reveled in the fear and control he exerted over his victims and the city at large. Others are driven by a twisted sense of sexual gratification. For these individuals, killing becomes intertwined with their sexuality, a dark and disturbing manifestation of their desires. Ted Bundy, who preyed on young women who resembled his college sweetheart, is a chilling example of this type of killer. Chapter 6. In the Wake of Terror, Law Enforcement and Society's Response. As the body count rises and fear grips the community, the pressure on law enforcement to catch these elusive predators intensifies. The hunt for a serial killer is a race against time, a desperate scramble to connect the dots, decipher the patterns, and bring these individuals to justice before they can claim another victim. But tracking down a phantom is no easy task. Serial killers often blend seamlessly into society, their true nature concealed beneath a veneer of normalcy. Forensic science plays a crucial role in the pursuit of justice. From analyzing DNA evidence to identifying fibers and trace materials, forensic investigators work tirelessly to piece together the puzzle of the killer's movements and methods. Profiling, a controversial yet often invaluable tool, allows investigators to delve into the mind of the killer. By analyzing the crime scene, the victim selection, and the method of killing, profilers attempt to create a psychological portrait of the perpetrator. Outro: The study of serial killers is not for the faint of heart. It is a journey into the darkest recesses of the human soul, a confrontation with the unsettling reality that such monsters walk among us. But it is a journey we must undertake not to glorify their deeds but to understand them. For only by comprehending the darkness can we hope to protect the innocent from its grasp. If you found this exploration of the criminal mind as fascinating as it is disturbing, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an episode of The Untold Story.
On a routine flight in 1971, a calm man with a bomb hijacked a plane, then vanished without a trace. This is the story of D.B. Cooper, the skyjacker who got away. The calm before the storm, the setting of the hijacking on. November 24th, 1971. A day that began like any other for the passengers aboard Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305. There was no way to predict that they would become part of one of the most captivating and enigmatic criminal stories in U.S. history. The flight, traveling from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, was a typical domestic route, relatively short with no cause for concern. There were 36 passengers aboard and a crew of 6, including the captain, first officer, and flight attendants. If you love unsolved mysteries and thrilling crime stories, make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, and drop a comment. What do you think happened to D.B. Cooper? Among these passengers was an individual who would soon capture the nation's attention, known by the pseudonym D.B. Cooper. At the time, he was just another middle-aged man, dressed in a sharp suit, with neatly combed hair and an aura of quiet normalcy. But behind that calm demeanor was a carefully orchestrated plan. One that would shock everyone aboard the plane, as well as law enforcement and investigators across the country. The beginning of the hijacking was both subtle and dramatic, Cooper, who was seated in a rear window seat, first caught the attention of flight attendant Florence Schaffner when he passed her a note. Initially, Schaffner thought it might be a love letter, something innocent or even flirtatious. However, when she opened the note, it was clear that Cooper had far more sinister intentions. The note was brief, but its message was clear. He had a bomb in his possession and was demanding money, parachutes, and an escape route. I have a bomb in my briefcase. I am hijacking this plane. I want 200,000, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to take me to Mexico City. Do not alert the authorities, or I will detonate the bomb. For Schaffner, this was a chilling moment. She did not alert the other passengers right away, but she discreetly passed the note to the cockpit crew. Within moments, the atmosphere in the plane began to shift. There was no immediate panic, but the gravity of the situation was starting to settle in. The calm nature of Cooper himself, however, seemed almost paradoxical. He was not aggressive or frantic. He was calm, collected, and precise in his instructions. The plan begins to unfold. The cockpit crew, upon receiving the alarming message, quickly contacted air traffic control. There was a sense of urgency, though no immediate panic, as the situation was contained so far to the plane's crew and flight attendants. Cooper, now fully in control of the situation, began to issue specific demands. He wanted $200,000 in unmarked $20 bills, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck waiting on the ground in Seattle to refuel the plane for its journey to Mexico City. Cooper's knowledge of aviation and the way he spoke to the crew suggested that he was not an ordinary criminal. He appeared to know how to operate the plane, how air traffic control worked, and even how to communicate his demands without panicking. It was clear that he had thought this through. In the meantime, the airline worked quickly with authorities. The plane was instructed to remain in a holding pattern while officials scrambled to comply with Cooper's demands. The FBI was alerted, and negotiations began. The crew and passengers, unaware of the specific situation, were in a state of suspense. The passengers continued to believe they were on a routine flight, even as tension began to mount in the cockpit. The exchange, the ransom and the parachutes as the plane circled over Seattle. Waiting for further instructions, the FBI arranged to meet Cooper's demands. The money was secured, $200,000 in cash, and the parachutes were provided. Although the authorities were prepared to comply with his demand for 4 parachutes, there was an element of mistrust. Why would a hijacker need 4 parachutes? Would he be attempting to escape with accomplices? The authorities were careful, but they realized that Cooper's escape plan was beginning to take shape, and they had no choice but to cooperate. Beasties. The time the ransom was delivered to the plane, the situation had evolved. The 36 passengers were allowed to disembark in Seattle, leaving only the flight crew on board with Cooper. The exchange went without incident, and Cooper's demeanor remained calm throughout. In fact, he even engaged in small talk with the flight attendants, asking about their lives and offering friendly conversation. It was bizarre. The hijacker seemed unfazed, almost too polite for someone who had just taken control of a plane. Once the ransom was in his possession and the passengers were off the plane, Cooper made it clear that he wanted the plane to be flown to Mexico City, though he specified that it must remain at a low altitude with the rear stairwell left open, a very unusual and risky request. The crew followed his instructions, as they had no other choice but to comply. The escape and disappearance. The final moments, the plane's path to the unknown. At approximately 8:00 p.m. that night, as the plane flew over the rugged terrain of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper made his move. With the plane flying at a low altitude, around 10,000 feet, and at a speed of 200 knots, he opened the rear stairwell door. The crew didn't immediately realize what had happened. They had been focused on maintaining the plane's speed and altitude, as Cooper had demanded. when suddenly the aft stairwell door opened. There were no immediate sounds of chaos or alarm, which further added to the mystery. In fact, the flight attendants did not even know Cooper had jumped until later. As the crew worked to keep the plane in a steady and safe flight path, Cooper, in an act of extraordinary audacity, leapt into the cold night air, carrying the ransom money and a parachute. The plane continued to fly on autopilot for a short time, unaware that the hijacker was gone. The immediate response: a search begins. The crew quickly realized something was amiss. After ensuring that all of the remaining passengers were safe and accounted for, they began to check the plane's systems, looking for any signs that something had gone wrong. It was only then that they realized the rear stairwell had been opened. The plane was on a trajectory toward the Washington wilderness, and the crew had no idea whether Cooper had made it safely to the ground, or if he had simply perished in the freezing cold of the night. Authorities were immediately notified, and an intense search began, led by the FBI, local law enforcement, and military personnel. Despite the comprehensive efforts to locate Cooper, no trace of the hijacker was found. For years, the search remained unsuccessful. The wilderness of Washington's Cascade Range and the Columbia River were combed thoroughly, but the mountainous terrain, dense forests, and inclement weather made the search incredibly difficult. Despite a multi-year investigation and an extensive manhunt, there were no signs of Cooper's parachute or body. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. Over time, the authorities narrowed down possible landing zones, but all attempts to uncover any substantial evidence were fruitless. The investigation, theories, and suspects. The first leads in growing suspicion. After the hijacking, the FBI launched an intensive investigation. They compiled detailed descriptions of Cooper, based on interviews with the passengers and flight crew. These descriptions painted a picture of a man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, with a nondescript appearance. Witnesses described him as someone who seemed normal, even slightly unremarkable. This made it difficult to pinpoint a suspect based on physical appearance alone. One of the earliest leads came from a witness who had claimed to see Cooper on the plane speaking in a nonchalant manner, but these descriptions were inconsistent. Some witnesses thought Cooper had a foreign accent, while others thought he was more American. There was no conclusive evidence linking Cooper to any known criminals or individuals in law enforcement databases. By the time the investigation reached its peak, there were numerous theories and suspects, but no clear answers. The case became a wild mix of investigative work, public fascination, and amateur sleuthing. The investigation deepens: suspects, leads, and challenges, the search for clues. What was left behind? Despite the dramatic and sudden nature of the hijacking, there were a few key clues that law enforcement clung to in the years following Cooper's disappearance. These pieces of evidence were critical in shaping the direction of the investigation, but they also revealed the complexities and challenges that the FBI would face in solving the case. The most significant of these pieces of evidence were a few: fingerprints that were found on the plane, which were suspected to belong to Cooper. However, these prints were not definitive. There was not enough clarity to match them to a known individual in the databases at the time. Further complicating matters, the prints didn't match any suspect who had a criminal background or previous history of hijacking. While the fingerprints were a lead, they ultimately didn't offer any breakthrough, leaving authorities in a frustrating situation. In addition to the fingerprints, one of the most intriguing discoveries came in 1980. A young boy, while playing near the Columbia River, found a decaying bundle of cash. Upon closer inspection, it was discovered that the serial numbers on the bills matched those that had been given to Cooper as ransom. This discovery gave investigators new hope, but it also raised more questions than answers. How had the money ended up by the river? Had Cooper survived the jump, or had he met an unfortunate fate in the rugged terrain? The discovery of the cache sparked new waves of speculation. But once again, the trail went cold. No other physical evidence, such as a parachute or Cooper's body, was ever recovered in the area, despite extensive searches. Theories and speculation. Theories on Cooper's identity. With few solid clues and no conclusive leads, the D.B. Cooper case was left to speculation and a variety of theories. Over the years, these theories have ranged from the mundane to the outlandish, as amateur sleuths, journalists, and even retired FBI agents have attempted to solve the mystery. Some of the most prominent theories include the military paratrooper theory. One of the most common theories suggests that Cooper had a military background, specifically in paratrooper or skydiving operations. This theory is based on several key aspects of the hijacking. First, Cooper knew about the specific type of parachutes he requested. He asked for military-grade chutes, not standard civilian ones. Additionally, his knowledge of the rear stairwell's nose, operation, and the plane's flight path also suggested a high level of aviation and parachuting expertise. Many people who have studied the case have pointed out that only someone with a military background would be capable of executing such an escape with the precision Cooper displayed. This theory led investigators to focus on military personnel, who may have been stationed at nearby bases or who had experience with high-altitude parachuting. Some theories even suggested Cooper might have been a disgruntled military member who used his knowledge of the system to commit the hijacking and escape. The career criminal theory. Another theory is that Cooper was a career criminal who had evaded the authorities for years before attempting the daring hijacking. This theory is based on the fact that Cooper was calm and collected throughout the hijacking, demonstrating knowledge of both the criminal world and the aviation system. Some investigators hypothesize that Cooper may have had experience with other crimes such as bank robberies or heists and used his understanding of law enforcement tactics to outsmart the authorities. This theory also highlights Cooper's meticulous planning and his willingness to take a huge risk. It was thought that such an individual would not only have the audacity to hijack an airplane, but would also know how to disappear afterward, potentially using fake identities or hiding in plain sight for years. The plane engineer or aviation's worker theory. A third theory that gained traction was that Cooper might have been someone with a background in aviation, possibly even a former airline employee. Some pointed out that only someone familiar with how planes worked and how to execute a parachute jump from a Boeing 727 would be able to pull off the heist with such precision. This theory suggested that Cooper might have been a former airline mechanic, flight engineer, or someone who worked in aircraft maintenance. People who would know the inner workings of an airplane and its systems. In support of this theory, investigators noted that Cooper seemed comfortable in the cockpit and knew exactly what he was asking for when it came to the parachutes and flight path. His calm and confident demeanor during the hijacking would also fit the profile of someone who was intimately familiar with aviation. The outsider or lone wolf theory. Some investigators and sleuths have posited that Cooper was simply a lone wolf, a person with no formal ties to criminal organizations or the military. This theory suggests that Cooper was an individual who had planned the hijacking meticulously on his own, without the help of accomplices. According to this theory, Cooper's jump was well executed, not due to military or criminal experience, but because he had studied skydiving or had previous experience on his own. This theory paints Cooper as someone deeply familiar with the mechanics of the hijacking and his escape without relying on any formal training or a criminal background. It speculates that Cooper might have been someone who had prepared for the heist over an extended period, perhaps using library books, skydiving training, or other means to gain the knowledge he needed to pull off the crime. The accidental survivor theory. An even more extreme theory suggests that Cooper might have survived the jump purely by accident. This theory speculates that Cooper was not as skilled in skydiving as originally thought, and may have jumped out of the plane, only to be blown off course by strong winds. Some argue that Cooper might have become disoriented during the jump, resulting in a crash landing that would have left him injured, possibly leading to his death in the wilderness or his disappearance without a trace. While this theory remains on the fringe, it has been examined as a possibility, especially in light of the lack of any physical evidence such as a body or parachute. The end of the FBI investigation. Closing the case, the FBI closes the case. After decades of investigation, the FBI finally closed the case in 2016, formally, ending the pursuit of D.B. Cooper. Despite the extensive resources dedicated to solving the crime, Cooper's identity remained elusive. The FBI had investigated hundreds of suspects over the years, but none were conclusively linked to the hijacking. Ultimately, the Bureau decided that without new evidence, it would no longer actively pursue the case. However, despite the case being closed, interest in the mystery of D.B. Cooper did not die down. In fact, the conclusion of the investigation seemed to fuel public fascination even more. The legend of D.B. Cooper, the mysterious hijacker who had pulled off a daring escape and evaded justice for decades, only grew stronger. The ongoing popularity and cultural impact, the D.B. Cooper hijacking has remained one of the most enduring and captivating mysteries in U.S. criminal history. Over the years, the case has sparked books, documentaries, podcasts, and even a feature film. The story has become a symbol of the audacity and skill of the hijacker, as well as the complexities of criminal investigations. Cooper's ability to disappear without a trace has made him a legend in the realm of unsolved crimes. Amateur sleuths and crime enthusiasts continue to speculate on who D.B. Cooper really was. Every so often, new theories surface, often fueled by the release of new information or the discovery of old evidence. In 2017, for instance, a group of scientists and researchers revealed that they had examined the parachutes Cooper may have used in the hijacking and found potential clues that could lead to his identity. However, these findings have yet to result in any conclusive answers. Despite the uncertainty, one thing is clear. The legend of D.B. Cooper will not fade away. Whether Cooper survived and lived a secret life, or whether he perished in the wilderness, his story continues to captivate the imaginations of millions. The mystery of D.B. Cooper is likely to remain unsolved, and it will likely continue to intrigue generations to come. Legacy and conclusion D.B. Cooper's hijacking remains one of the most remarkable cases in criminal history, not because it was the largest heist, nor because it was the most dangerous, but because of the sheer mystery surrounding it. A man, with calm and calculated precision, executed one of the most audacious criminal acts in American history, and simply vanished. Decades of investigation, thousands of pages of evidence, and countless theories have failed to uncover his identity. The case itself speaks to the complexity of human nature, the desire to outwit the system, to escape, and to leave behind nothing but a trail of questions. Whether D.B. Cooper was a skilled criminal, a former military paratrooper, or an ordinary man who pulled off an extraordinary crime, he remains an enigma. The legend of D.B. Cooper endures, both as a symbol of the daring heist and as a reminder of how some mysteries, no matter how deeply they are investigated, may never be solved. A quiet flight turned into a nightmare. On the afternoon of November 24, 1971, Northwest Orient Flight 305 took off from Portland, Oregon, en route to Seattle, Washington. It was a routine flight with 36 passengers and 6 crew members on board, all unaware of the drama that was about to unfold. The aircraft, a Boeing 727-100, was an ideal choice for a hijacking due to its unique rear stairwell, a feature that would later play a crucial role in the story. The man who would soon be known as D.B. Cooper was dressed in a business suit, a neat tie, and dark sunglasses. He blended in well with other passengers. With his dark hair, neat appearance, and calm demeanor, Cooper didn't seem out of place. He ordered a bourbon and soda from the flight attendant, a common drink for many travelers at the time, and settled in for the short flight. The flight was cruising at 10,000 feet when Cooper handed a note to Florence Schaffner, a stewardess working the flight. At first, she thought it was just a casual request, but when she opened the note, it was a startling demand. The note read, "I have a bomb. I want $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and a fuel truck standing by in Seattle to take me away." Schaffner took the note to the cockpit immediately, and upon showing it to the captain, William Scott, the decision was made to comply with Cooper's demands in hopes of saving lives. The plane was diverted to Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, where authorities began to prepare for the unusual hostage situation. Police and FBI agents set up a perimeter, and the flight crew was informed that Cooper had requested a rendezvous on the tarmac. The demands, specific and calculated Cooper's. Demands were unusual, but also indicative of someone who was confident and knew exactly what they wanted. He requested $200,000 in unmarked bills, with the serial numbers to be recorded in advance. This amount, equivalent to about $1.3 million in today's money, was not an unreasonable sum for a hijacking ransom, though it was high enough to suggest someone who had knowledge of the criminal world. He also asked for 4 parachutes, 2 main chutes, and 2 reserves. Why did he want 4 parachutes? Some theorists suggest he wanted to ensure he would have a functioning chute, regardless of whether he was alone or with an accomplice. Another possibility is that he was simply being cautious, covering all his bases in case something went wrong during the jump. The request for a fuel truck standing by was also puzzling. The plane had enough fuel to reach Seattle, but Cooper likely knew that once he jumped, the plane would have to return to the airport immediately. So having refueling equipment on hand was a strategic move. Once the plane landed in Seattle, Cooper released 10 of the 36 passengers, leaving behind a skeleton crew of flight attendants and 2 pilots. Cooper allowed the passengers to leave unharmed, showing a strange sense of control and calm in the midst of the hijacking. The plane takes off. Again, Cooper's calmness, once. The ransom was delivered and the parachutes were provided, Cooper told the remaining flight crew what they needed to do. He insisted that the plane take off again, this time bound for Mexico City, flying at a low altitude. The crew complied with his instructions, knowing that their survival depended on doing so. The Boeing 727 took off again, with Cooper now in full control. The pilots were instructed to keep the plane flying at about 10,000 feet and to maintain a slower than usual speed, likely to allow Cooper to jump off. Cooper kept to himself, and only when the plane was over a remote stretch of land did he act. After a few hours of flying, he signaled to the crew that he was ready to make his escape. He opened the rear stairway door, an unorthodox move for a hijacker. The 727's rear stairs were not commonly used in such incidents and would have been a very difficult exit point for anyone who wasn't familiar with the aircraft's design. But Cooper seemed to know exactly what he was doing. As the plane was cruising over the dense, forested terrain of the Pacific Northwest, Cooper made his move. The crew reported a sudden drop in pressure in the cabin. Moments later, they realized that Cooper had parachuted out of the aircraft into the night. The hijacking was over. The FBI investigation, early challenges, the immediate response. Once the plane landed in Reno, Nevada, the FBI was immediately on the scene, preparing to investigate what had just happened. Authorities began to carefully piece together the details of Cooper's escape. The challenge was that, aside from the ransom money, there were no physical traces of Cooper. The lack of forensic evidence made the investigation even more difficult, and as time passed, the frustration only grew. Within days, the FBI began to track down possible suspects, starting with individuals who had criminal backgrounds or a history of hijacking. They also focused on potential connections to skydiving experts or former military personnel. The FBI's initial theory was that Cooper had parachuted into the wilderness, and they immediately began organizing search efforts in the remote areas over which the plane had flown. The search efforts, the FBI, along with local law enforcement, and search teams scoured the forests and mountains of Washington and Oregon for any signs of Cooper. Despite their efforts, they found no trace of the hijacker or the parachutes he had used. One of the key challenges they faced was the rough terrain, which made it nearly impossible to search effectively. In the following weeks, the search was expanded to include the Columbia River and other waterways in the area. Yet again, no concrete evidence surfaced. The lack of a body, parachute, or any remains was perplexing. Over time, it became clear that Cooper's escape had been meticulously planned, and he had managed to vanish without a trace. Theories and possible suspects, unraveling the mystery suspect profiles. Key individuals. Considered, over the years, dozens of individuals have been named as possible suspects in the D.B. Cooper case. These suspects were often chosen because of their backgrounds, behavior, or coincidences that made them stand out in the investigation. However, none of these individuals were conclusively linked to the crime. Richard McCoy, the skyjacker who may have been Cooper Richard McCoy, a man who successfully hijacked a plane in 1972, was one of the most prominent suspects. McCoy's crime, while similar to Cooper's, was carried out less skillfully. However, some believed McCoy may have been Cooper, especially considering the similarities between the two crimes. Both hijackers demanded similar ransoms and parachutes, and both used planes to escape. McCoy, however, was caught after a few days, and the FBI cleared him of being Cooper after his death. Kenneth Christiansen, the ex-pilot who fit the profile. Another key suspect was Kenneth Christiansen, a former Northwest Orient Airlines employee. Christiansen had the knowledge of the airline system, the plane, and the mechanics of skydiving. He was also described as having a similar physical build to the composite sketch of Cooper. His brother, a retired detective, publicly suggested that Christiansen might have been the infamous hijacker. However, no concrete evidence ever confirmed this theory. L.D. Cooper, the relative of the hijacker. A more recent theory brought attention to L.D. Cooper, a man who was purportedly related to D.B. Cooper and who had a strange connection to the crime. Some believe that the hijacker may have been a distant relative of this individual, using the name D.B. as an alias. While this theory gained some traction, it remains largely speculative. The ongoing public fascination and cultural legacy. The D.B. Cooper case has become a part of American folklore. The mystery surrounding his identity, his daring heist, and his seemingly flawless escape have kept the story alive in popular culture. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and even movies have centered on the case, creating an enduring legacy. Despite the FBI's official closure of the case, in 2016, amateur sleuths, conspiracy theorists, and journalists continue to dig for clues. New theories are proposed, and old leads are re-examined. But still, no one has been able to solve the puzzle of D.B. Cooper's true identity. As time passes, the myth of Cooper grows. The notion of a man successfully carrying out a heist, jumping from a plane in the dead of night and vanishing into the wilderness, has inspired generations of crime enthusiasts. Cooper's name has become synonymous with daring escapes and unsolved mysteries. Certainly, let's expand further with more in-depth chapters, giving a detailed exploration of the case, its theories, and all of the critical components. These subsections will add significant breadth to the narrative, and we'll dive deep into different perspectives and theories related to D.B. Cooper's identity and escape. Historical context. The golden age of hijacking. Hijackings and aviation in the 1970s. The D.B. Cooper case took place during what is often referred to as the golden age of hijacking. The 1970s were a turbulent time for aviation security. Hijackings were disturbingly common, with numerous high-profile cases occurring over the decade. This climate of fear and uncertainty helped set the stage for the daring Cooper hijacking. The rise in airline hijackings during this era was, in part, due to the relative ease with which criminals could commandeer a plane. In the early days of commercial air travel, airports and airlines had minimal security measures, and passengers often had access to the cockpit or were allowed to bring on items that would today be strictly forbidden, including firearms, knives, and explosives. This period saw some of the most audacious heists in aviation history, including hijackings by terrorists, criminals, and even political activists. The most notable example was the case of the Black September hijacking of a plane in 1970, a terrorist attack that was followed by the hijacking of multiple planes in the United States. As a result, hijackings became somewhat commonplace, although the D.B. Cooper hijacking was unique due to its level of planning and execution. Cooper's heist was notably different from many of the other hijackings of the time. Whereas some were politically motivated, Cooper's hijacking appeared to be a purely criminal act, motivated by money, and perhaps by the thrill of the heist itself. The Boeing 727, a plane. Designed for escape, the Boeing 727, the aircraft used in the Coopers. Hijacking was a relatively new model at the time. It had features that made it both an ideal tool for hijackers and a unique target for D.B. Cooper. Most significant was the plane's rear stairway, which allowed Cooper to escape mid-flight. Unlike other planes, the 727's design allowed passengers and crew to exit through a rear door while the aircraft was in motion, which played directly into Cooper's plan. While the plane's rear stairway was not widely known outside of aviation circles, it had become infamous after Cooper's escape. This unique feature has since been incorporated into many discussions about the hijacking, as it gave Cooper a means of escape that few would have considered possible before. At the time, the 727 was widely used for short to medium-range flights, and its popularity in the commercial aviation industry meant that many people were familiar with its design. Cooper's precise knowledge of this plane's systems suggests that he might have had a background in aviation or a deep understanding of how commercial planes worked. The ransom. A deliberate financial request. The money. A specific demand. For Cash DBB, Cooper's demand for $200,000 was specific, and it reflects a precise understanding of what he needed for his escape. The $200,000 was requested in unmarked $20 bills. While this amount may seem modest in comparison to modern heists, it was a significant sum in 1971, roughly equivalent to $1.3 million today when adjusted for inflation. The fact that Cooper requested unmarked bills was both a calculated choice and an obstacle for investigators. Unmarked bills are much harder to trace than serial numbered bills, which could be used by the authorities to track the ransom's movement. By requesting cash that had no identifiable markers, Cooper made it far more difficult for authorities to trace his movements, or even determine where the money ended up after the hijacking. This detail has sparked much discussion. Some believe that Cooper's careful planning was meant to avoid being caught at any cost. Others suggest that Cooper may have simply known that authorities wouldn't be able to track the money, and therefore he demanded it to ensure his own safety. The parachutes, ensuring a safe exit. The request for 4 parachutes was another important aspect of the hijacking. At first glance, it might seem excessive. Why would a hijacker need 4 parachutes? Theories abound as to why Cooper made this unusual request. One explanation is that he wanted to ensure that if something went wrong during his escape, he would have a backup. It also ensured that there was no suspicion cast on his intentions if he were to jump with a parachute, as most hijackers would not request such an item if they were planning a straightforward getaway. Additionally, some have speculated that Cooper may have had an accomplice, and thus the request for 2 reserve parachutes might suggest that he was planning to share the equipment. While there's no direct evidence of an accomplice, it remains a possibility that Cooper had a partner who assisted in the planning of the hijacking. The FBI did investigate the types of parachutes Cooper requested, and it was found that he asked for civilian-style equipment, not military-grade parachutes. This suggests that he was familiar with skydiving, or at least had access to someone who could provide the necessary equipment for a safe descent. The escape? A daring jump into the unknown. The descent. The physics of Cooper's escape. The most fascinating and mysterious part of the D.B. Cooper case was, without a doubt, the actual jump. Cooper exited the plane at night, somewhere between Portland and Seattle, with no visible signs of struggle or failure. He successfully bailed out of the plane into the cold night air in the dense wilderness without leaving any physical trace behind. While the FBI and others have speculated about the exact location where Cooper may have jumped, they have never been able to pinpoint it with certainty. The Boeing 727 was flying at approximately 10,000 feet when Cooper exited the plane. That altitude is well within the range for skydiving, and the cold temperatures likely played a role in Cooper's decision to make his escape in the late fall. When the weather was particularly harsh, Cooper's ability to survive the jump without leaving a body or parachute continues to fuel much of the speculation surrounding the case. He might have been an experienced skydiver, or perhaps he was an amateur with a great deal of luck. The conditions during the jump were extreme: rain, cold winds, and low visibility. Yet Cooper managed to land without being discovered, even as the FBI conducted a massive search effort. The physical evidence, what was left behind. While authorities have never found Cooper's body, parachute, or any trace of him directly after the jump, they did recover one significant piece of physical evidence: the ransom money. In 1980, a young boy digging near the Columbia River discovered a decaying package containing $5,820 bills, part of the ransom money. The discovery confirmed that Cooper's escape had likely taken place near the river, though the exact location of his landing remained a mystery. The discovery of the ransom money was a crucial moment in the investigation, as it provided new leads for authorities to follow. However, despite extensive efforts to trace the origin of the cash, no definitive link was made to the hijacker himself. The absence of Cooper's body, parachute, or any clear physical evidence left the case in a state of uncertainty. The FBI investigation, a case that stubbornly resisted closure initial investigations, a limited clue. When the FBI first began investigating the D.B. Cooper hijacking, they faced significant challenges. With no solid evidence to work with, the investigation largely relied on eyewitness accounts from the flight crew and passengers. However, these accounts were inconsistent and the descriptions of Cooper varied, making it difficult for the FBI to narrow down a suspect. The first big break in the investigation came when the ransom money was found in 1980. This discovery rekindled interest in the case, prompting the FBI to reevaluate old leads and search for new ones. Despite this, the investigation ultimately stalled. Investigators could not find any physical evidence that conclusively linked a suspect to the crime. A major turning point occurred in 2016 when the FBI officially closed the investigation. The announcement stated that the case had gone cold, and without new evidence, they would not continue pursuing it. This decision left many questions unanswered, but it also sparked renewed interest in the case from the public, with armchair detectives continuing to seek out their own answers. Theories on Cooper's identity. A deep dive. The military theory. Did Cooper have military training? One of the most widely discussed theories regarding Cooper's identity is that he had military experience. The theory is rooted in Cooper's ability to parachute into a difficult and remote area with apparent ease, and in his knowledge of aviation systems and procedures. Some believe that his decision to use a parachute and to request a specific kind of chute with particular safety features suggests that he was an experienced skydiver, possibly with military training. Many experts believe that Cooper was likely familiar with the logistics of a parachute jump, particularly the challenges involved in jumping from a moving plane at night in extreme weather. Some theorists suggest that Cooper could have been a former member of the military who was familiar with airborne operations. His ability to escape undetected by authorities and evade the FBI's extensive search efforts supports this idea. 3. Criminal background. Was Cooper a career criminal? Another theory revolves around the idea that Cooper may have had a background in organized crime or been a career criminal. Several aspects of the hijacking suggest that Cooper was well prepared and had a clear understanding of how to plan and execute such a complex crime. His decision to choose a specific amount of unmarked cash and his familiarity with aviation may point to someone with experience in heists or similar criminal endeavors. The careful execution of the crime, the choice of the specific flight, and the calculated escape suggest that Cooper was no amateur. He likely had knowledge of the criminal world, which could explain his ability to pull off such a high-stakes heist. The cultural impact. Cooper as a legend. The legacy of D.B. Cooper. A cultural icon, the mystery of D.B. Cooper has captivated the public for over 5 decades. His daring hijacking, successful escape, and the enduring mystery of his identity have made him an icon of criminal folklore. Over time, Cooper's case has inspired countless books, documentaries, movies, and even a popular podcast. He has become a symbol of defiance, a man who executed a perfect crime and vanished into the night. The image of D.B. Cooper, calm, calculated, and elusive, has shaped the public's perception of him as a criminal mastermind, one whose identity will forever remain a mystery. Fantastic! Let's dive even deeper. We can explore further aspects of the D.B. Cooper case by expanding on the theories, the cultural impact, the psychology behind Cooper's actions, the broader historical context, and how various investigations unfolded. By including even more details, we'll give the story a richer texture and create a more comprehensive narrative. The FBI's methodology, a new approach to investigation, the early days. An investigation based on limited information. From the moment the plane touched down in Seattle, the FBI was thrust into a high-stakes investigation that seemed almost impossible to solve. In the early days of the investigation, the agency had little to work with. The suspect's appearance was vague, and there were no clear leads to follow. Witness statements from the flight crew and passengers varied in their descriptions, and no one on the plane had seen Cooper's face clearly, which made it even more difficult to track down potential suspects. In the absence of concrete information, the FBI began by interviewing anyone who'd been on the plane that day. Flight attendants, passengers, and ground staff all became part of the puzzle. Despite all these interviews, the only piece of useful evidence was the note Cooper had passed to the flight attendant. Though the note had given the FBI a glimpse into Cooper's mindset, his clear demands and knowledge of how to handle such situations, the lack of physical evidence left the agency with little more than a few hunches. A limited scope, the X, early FBI theory. In the early stages of the investigation, the FBI followed a fairly standard procedure for investigating hijackings. They began by looking for potential suspects with backgrounds in criminal activity, particularly those with previous hijacking offenses or knowledge of skydiving and aviation. The agency also investigated the possibility that Cooper could have been a disgruntled former airline employee, which would have explained his familiarity with the aircraft. Additionally, the FBI hypothesized that Cooper may have had military training. After all, his ability to survive a nighttime jump with no visible signs of failure suggested that he had some experience in airborne operations. The investigation's early theory revolved around these possibilities, but it quickly became clear that the case would be far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The anatomy of a hijacking, breaking down the plan Cooper's premeditation. How he planned the perfect crime. One of the most remarkable aspects of the D.B. Cooper case is the apparent level of premeditation involved. Cooper's crime was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was meticulously planned. His knowledge of the plane, the parachutes, and even the amount of ransom he requested indicates that he was not a common criminal, but someone who understood how to execute a heist with precision. It's been suggested that Cooper likely spent time studying the logistics of the Boeing 727, as well as the safety procedures of the airline. His demands for unmarked bills were not random. They were specifically chosen to avoid easy traceability. The choice of parachutes was similarly strategic, ensuring that Cooper had the best chance of surviving the jump. Even the selection of the flight was deliberate. Northwest Orient Flight 305 was a regular service between Portland and Seattle, which would have been familiar to Cooper. It also took place at night, giving him the cover of darkness and over an area of dense forest, which was ideal for a successful getaway. The jump. Cooper's escape in detail. Let's take a closer look at the physics of Cooper's jump from the Boeing 727. Cooper's decision to open the rear stairwell door and leap out of the aircraft is still one of the most debated elements of the case. The rear stairway was a unique feature of the 727 and would have made it easier for Cooper to escape undetected, but jumping from a moving aircraft at 10,000 feet was a perilous endeavor. The temperature at that altitude would have been well below freezing, and the winds were likely to have been strong and turbulent. Despite these harsh conditions, Cooper executed the jump without any visible complications. The fact that he did not leave behind a parachute, body, or other physical evidence only adds to the mystique. Was he truly an expert skydiver? Or did he possess an incredible amount of luck? One critical point that has puzzled investigators is the lack of a parachute strap. Skydivers typically release the straps to facilitate a safe descent, but no evidence of this strap was found. It suggests that Cooper either removed it intentionally or it simply fell off during his descent, as the dense forest area may have impeded an effective search. Some experts argue that he may have also planned for an emergency landing, making the lack.
The autumn air was crisp, a gentle reminder of the changing seasons. The leaves were just beginning to turn, painting the city in hues of red, orange, and gold. October in Washington, D.C. is usually a time for vibrant colors and political buzz. The city, known for its historical significance and bustling activity, was alive with the usual anticipation of fall. But the year 2002 brought a different kind of chill to the capital. It wasn't just the cool breeze that sent shivers down spines. It was a pervasive sense of dread that settled over the city like a dark cloud. It started subtly, a whisper of unease, a creeping fear that something was amiss. People went about their daily routines, but there was an undercurrent of anxiety, a feeling that something terrible was about to happen. Then, the unthinkable happened. A sniper, lurking in the shadows, began a reign of terror. Shots rang out, seemingly random, each one claiming an innocent life. The city was under siege, held captive by an invisible enemy. No one knew who would be next. The fear was palpable, spreading like wildfire through the streets of Washington, D.C. People looked over their shoulders, their eyes scanning for any sign of danger. The simplest errands, pumping gas, walking to the car, even mowing the lawn, became fraught with terror. The sniper could be anywhere, hidden in plain sight. The city held its breath, united in fear. Panic bloomed, a dark flower spreading its tendrils through the city. People were afraid to go about their daily lives, their routines disrupted by the constant threat of violence. Schools were closed, events were canceled, and the streets that were once bustling with activity became eerily quiet. The vibrant colors of autumn were overshadowed by the grim reality of the situation. The community, known for its resilience, was brought to its knees by an unseen assailant. Law enforcement worked tirelessly, but the sniper remained elusive, a ghost in the urban landscape. The media coverage was relentless, each new report adding to the collective anxiety. The city was a powder keg, ready to explode at any moment. Families huddled together, seeking solace in each other's company. Conversations were hushed, and every loud noise made hearts race. The sense of community was strong, but so was the fear that gripped every resident. The sniper's reign of terror was a dark chapter in the city's history, a time when the vibrant life of Washington, D.C. was overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. But through it all, the spirit of the city endured, a testament to the resilience and strength of its people. As the days turned into weeks, the city remained on edge, but there was a growing sense of determination. The people of Washington, D.C. were not willing to let fear dictate their lives. They stood together, united in their resolve to reclaim their city from the grip of terror. The simplest acts of defiance, going to work, attending school, enjoying a walk in the park, became symbols of resilience. The sniper's shadow loomed large, but it could not extinguish the light of the community's spirit. The city of Washington, D.C. would eventually emerge from this dark period, scarred but stronger. The memory of those days would linger, a reminder of the fragility of peace and the strength of unity. The sniper could be anywhere, hidden in plain sight. The city held its breath, united in fear. But through it all, the spirit of the city endured, a testament to the resilience and strength of its people. The city held its breath, united in fear. The sniper's reign of terror was a dark chapter in the city's history, a time when the vibrant life of Washington, D.C. was overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. But through it all, the spirit of the city endured, a testament to the resilience and strength of its people. October 2nd, 2002. A day that would mark the beginning of a terrifying chapter in the history of Washington, D.C. and its surrounding areas. A date etched in the memory of every Washingtonian. The city was bustling with its usual energy, people going about their daily lives unaware of the impending horror. It began like any other day. The sun rose, casting a warm glow over the city. Commuters hurried to work, children went to school, and the rhythm of life continued as usual. But at 5:05 p.m., a shot pierced the air outside a busy shopping center in Wheaton, Maryland. The tranquility of the day was shattered in an instant. James D. Martin, a 55-year-old program analyst, was struck down while loading groceries into his car. He had just finished his workday and was preparing to head home. He became the sniper's first victim. The community was in shock, grappling with the sudden and senseless loss of a beloved member. At first it seemed like a random act of violence, a tragic incident, but perhaps an isolated one. The police began their investigation, looking for clues and answers. Tragic, but sadly not uncommon in a major city. People hoped it was an isolated incident, a one-time occurrence that would soon be resolved. But then the next day, another shot rang out. The fear that had begun to settle in the hearts of the residents was reignited. This time, the victim was James L. Buchanan, a 39-year-old landscaper, shot while mowing a lawn in Rockville, Maryland. He was simply doing his job, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. The seemingly random nature of the attacks, the clean, distant shots, the lack of any apparent motive, all pointed towards a chilling possibility that these were not isolated incidents. This was no ordinary crime. The precision and cold calculation suggested something far more sinister. This was the work of a sniper, a methodical, remorseless killer who had begun a reign of terror that would grip the region in fear. Over the next few days, the body count rose. Each day brought a new attack, a new victim. A taxi driver filling his tank at a petrol station. A woman vacuuming her minivan. A man sitting on a bench reading a book. The sniper was relentless, striking with chilling precision, always from a distance, always leaving no trace. The attacks weren't confined to any one area. They spanned across Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. The randomness, the seeming lack of pattern, only amplified the terror. The sniper was a ghost, moving unseen, striking without warning. The city was paralyzed, living under the shadow of death. The fear was palpable. It hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket over the city. People were afraid to leave their homes. Schools were closed, businesses shuttered. The streets were eerily deserted, the usual hustle and bustle replaced by a tense, fearful silence. Those who did venture out moved with a hurried anxiety. They hugged buildings, avoided open spaces, their eyes constantly scanning the rooftops, searching for any sign of the sniper's nest. The simplest tasks, once mundane, were now imbued with a terrifying risk. Every trip to the grocery store, every commute to work could be their last. Amid the fear and chaos, the police were working tirelessly to catch the sniper. The investigation was massive, spanning multiple jurisdictions. Thousands of tips poured in, but most led nowhere. The sniper seemed to be always one step ahead, a phantom leaving no trace. Then came a breakthrough. At the scene of one of the shootings, the police found a chilling message, a tarot card, the death card, with the words, "Call me God," scrawled on it. This, finally, was a clue. The message, a twisted plea for recognition, gave investigators their first real lead. It also added a terrifying new dimension to the case. This wasn't just about killing, it was about power, about playing God. Section 6. Unmasking the Snipers, a Twisted Partnership. The Call Me God note led investigators to a chilling discovery. The sniper wasn't one person, but two. John Allen Muhammad, a 41-year-old Gulf War veteran, and Lee Boyd Malvo, his 17-year-old protege. Their twisted relationship, a toxic mix of manipulation and control, would become a key element in understanding the horrific crimes. Muhammad, the mastermind, had molded Malvo into his accomplice. He trained him in marksmanship, instilled in him a warped sense of loyalty, and ultimately used him as a tool in his deadly game. Malvo, young and impressionable, became a willing participant, eager to please his father figure. Section 7. Delving into darkness, motives, and manipulation. The motives behind the DC sniper attacks were complex and disturbing. Muhammad, driven by a need for control and a desire for revenge against his ex-wife, had meticulously planned the shootings. He saw himself as a puppet master, orchestrating fear and chaos to bend the world to his will. Malvo, on the other hand, was a victim of manipulation. He had been indoctrinated by Muhammad, brainwashed into believing that the shootings were justified. He saw Muhammad as a father figure, a savior, and was willing to do anything to earn his approval. Section 8. Justice Served, the Trial and Sentencing. The capture of Muhammad and Malvo brought a collective sigh of relief across the nation. The reign of terror was finally over. The trial that followed was a media sensation, the nation captivated by the chilling details of the case. Muhammad, representing himself, maintained a cold, defiant demeanor throughout the trial. Malvo, however, showed remorse, his testimony offering a glimpse into the psychological manipulation he had endured. In the end, both were found guilty. Muhammad was sentenced to death, while Malvo received 6 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Section 9. Scars on a Nation, the Enduring Legacy. This chapter delves into one of the most harrowing periods in recent American history, a time when fear and uncertainty gripped the nation. The DC sniper attacks were not just a series of random acts of violence, they were a calculated assault on the very fabric of society. The DC sniper attacks left an indelible mark on American society. The aftermath was a period of mourning and reflection, as the nation grappled with the senseless loss of life and the chilling realization that such terror could strike so close to home. The random acts of violence carried out with such cold precision shattered the sense of safety that many had taken for granted. Streets that were once bustling with life became scenes of chaos and fear. The fear that gripped the nation was palpable. Public spaces emptied as people stayed indoors, afraid to venture out. The constant media coverage only heightened the sense of dread, as every new report brought fresh waves of anxiety. The chilling realization that evil could lurk in the most unexpected places, it was a wake-up call. The attacks forced a re-evaluation of security measures and a deeper understanding of the vulnerabilities that existed within society. The attacks led to increased security measures with heightened vigilance at public events and a more visible police presence. These changes, while necessary, also served as a constant reminder of the new reality that the nation faced. A heightened sense of vulnerability permeated everyday life. People began to look over their shoulders more often, and families took extra precautions to secure their homes. The sense of invulnerability that many had felt was irrevocably shattered. The lasting impact on the national psyche was profound. Many sought psychological counseling to cope with the trauma, while others found themselves glued to the news, unable to look away from the unfolding horror. But they also revealed the resilience of the human spirit. In the face of terror, communities came together, offering support and solace to those affected. The attacks, while devastating, also brought out the best in people. In the face of terror, communities came together, offering support and solace. Candlelight vigils were held, and volunteers worked tirelessly to provide food and blankets to those in need. The sense of unity was a beacon of hope in a dark time. The victims, though gone, would never be forgotten. Their lives, tragically cut short, served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the need to cherish every moment. Their lives, tragically cut short, served as a stark reminder of the fragility of life. Families and friends gathered to honor their memories, holding framed photos and laying fresh flowers at their grave sites. And yet, amidst the sorrow, there was a sense of hope. The enduring power of hope in the face of adversity shone through as people held hands in solidarity, determined to rebuild and move forward. The legacy of those lost would live on, not just in memory, but in the strength and resilience of a nation that refused to be broken.